Hello and welcome to the second season of Radio Faces, brought to you by HCC TV. I'm Indy Kalu, and he is Hall of Fame sports writer for the Chronicle, John the General McClain. You can also catch him on Sports Radio 610. And when you're in front of the computer, do not forget to click on chron.com to catch his amazing articles.
Don't forget, Indy played 12 years for the Philadelphia Eagles, Washington Redskins, and the Houston Texans. And you can hear him on Sports Radio 610. You can see him on sportsradio610.com, and his tweets are at IndyKalu. Now, we're going to start right off the bat like we did last year. We're going to talk Houston Texans.
And when you talk Houston Texans, you cannot forget Peyton Manning. Even though he's an Indianapolis Colt, that's the opening game. And right now, all the talks, all the rumors are he won't be on the field opening day. If you're a Houston Texan fan, analyst, whatever you are, if you're pulling for the Texans, you have to be happy. But I have to make sure that the players and coaches don't feel like this is going to be a gimme because the best player of our time, the best quarterback of our time, isn't stepping on that field. It takes a lot more than one guy to defeat a team. And I think right now the Houston Texans realize that, and they're not going to overlook the Indianapolis Colts just because Peyton Manning might not be on that field.
Now, I wanted Peyton to play. They beat him last year, 34-24. Peyton played. In the two games last year, he threw for 701 yards, 5 touchdowns, no interceptions. Are they primed for a letdown with Kerry Collins?
You know, anytime you're missing the best quarterback, I don't care who you are, I don't care how good the guys around you, you're going to have a letdown. I'm not predicting 3-13 for the Indianapolis Colts like some of these experts are, but they're not going to be as good without Peyton Manning as they are with him, regardless of who the backup is, unless it was a guy named Tom Brady. So with that being said, yes, they're going to have a step back, but I don't think they'll be as bad as people think because there is a reason why Kerry Collins played 16 years in the NFL. He has a big arm. He hasn't had a chance to throw to the likes of a Reggie Wayne, Pierre Garçon before in his career. So this is going to be an exciting time for Kerry Collins, but the Indianapolis Colts will be a weaker team.
Now remember, he's 3-2 for the Titans against the Texans, and he averaged 28.6 points a game. But against Wade Phillips, he's 0-7 when Wade's a defensive coordinator. Now, let's talk about Steve Slayton. We don't know if Arian Foster's going to play. We do know that if he doesn't, Derek Ward and Ben Tate will get all the playing time. But what does it mean to keep Slayton?
Well, what it means is you have a great insurance policy. You want to go into a game with 3 viable running backs. Arian Foster is going to be a question mark for the beginning of the season. They're talking about the hamstrings, not that serious. But when you're a skill position player, when you're as fast as an Arian Foster and you have an issue with your hamstring, it's going to linger if you don't take care of it. So that is why I believe they kept Steve Slayton on the roster. And if they find out early on in this season that Arian Foster is 100% healthy and they don't need to keep 4 backs, then you use Steve Slayton to trade him away and get some value for him because teams around the league, they realize what Steve Slayton did as a rookie, having 1,200 yards from scrimmage, and the reason that he had his drop-off was because he had the issue with his neck and with his nerves in his fingers. All that's been cured according to doctors, according to Steve Slayton. If you need a scat back, a good change of back, I believe you will trade something away to get a Steve Slayton. So right now, they're using him and keeping him on the roster for insurance and for the chance to get some value in him once Arian Foster's 100%.
Even though he didn't carry in preseason, he averaged 4.9 yards a carry last season in the limited action he did get. Now, the move everybody's talking about is your protege. You've made him everything he is today, led the team in sacks the last 5 years. What do you think about Mario moving now that you watched him a little bit for 3 games? Can it work?
I think it can work just because he's a football player. He's a pass rusher. When you look at the 3-4 system and him being labeled as an outside linebacker, that's just name only. What he is, they should put a PR, and I'm not talking about punt returner, pass rusher. Mario Williams is a pass rusher. He's proven it. He's shown it in the past. Just because he's going to outside linebacker, I don't think it's going to affect his stats that much at the end of the day because you'll see many times they'll have 4 down linemen when they're in nickel, when they're in dime. Wade Phillips talks about he uses a hybrid 3-4 system. What I noticed during preseason, what I noticed during the practices that I went to, there were a lot of times when it was a passing down that they had 4 guys down with their hands in the dirt. That's what Mario likes to do. That's what he's comfortable at. And I feel like he's going to have a lot of opportunities to rush with his hand in the dirt.
People forget about he's going to rush with his hand in dirt like he has in the past. They think he's going to be up all the time. He'll be down opposite Connor Barwin with Antonio Smith and J.J. Watt in the middle. That's a pretty formidable foursome. when it comes to the pass rush.
When you talk about Antonio Smith, this is a guy who I believe is underrated. He gets overlooked, but he will work from the 3 technique, 5 technique, even from the 0 technique. It doesn't matter where you put Antonio Smith. He's going to give you push. And with the guys that you named, Mario Williams on one side, Connor Barwin on the other, J.J. Watt, the fabulous rookie, and Antonio Smith on the inside, those are 4 guys that know how to get after the passer, and it's just going to be exciting to see them rush. It's going to be exciting to see how aggressive they're going to get upfield. And I don't think Mario's stats are going to drop off. I do believe there's going to be a learning curve because a lot of the time he is going to be rushing on 1st and 2nd down from a 2-point stance, and that is difficult to learn. I believe it takes about a year of playing to really get comfortable rushing from a 2-point stance, but he will have ample opportunity to rush from a 3-point stance, and he will still have 10 or more sacks this year.
Let me ask you one more thing before we go to our first break. The mentality of this team, do you see it changing, and how important is that to changing? What do they got to do to keep from blowing games at the end like they did last season?
I'll tell you what, I see the confidence, and I see the confidence in Wade Phillips from the players. When I talk to these guys that I know off record, of course, then I ask them how do they feel about Peyton Manning not playing. All of their attitudes are, we don't care. It doesn't matter who you put out there. We need to beat the best to be the best. All the cliches, they're saying it, but they're believing it. And I believe that's coming from Wade Phillips. Wade Phillips, he's not in awe of Peyton Manning. You know, he's had defenses go against Joe Montana, go against Steve Young. He's gone against the best. He's seen the best at practice in Jim Kelly. So when you see that confidence from your defensive coordinator and the experience, it trickles down to the players. And that's why when I ask them about Peyton Manning not playing, what's their take on it, and they say it doesn't matter, I believe that comes from Wade Phillips, and you just see the confidence and the swag that everybody talks about.
He's Andy Kalu, 12-year NFL defensive end. I'm John McClain. When we come back from our next break, we're going to tell you our HCC Smart Decisions of the offseason. Stay tuned.
How valuable is a faculty comprised of PhDs, MDs, MBAs, with international research grants and prestigious national positions? You'll find just that at HCC. But those aren't the only things that differentiate our faculty. We are at the forefront of what's next in teaching and technology. We are leading our students to new futures and better opportunities. HCC, Smart Decision.
Welcome back to Radio Faces. He's Andy Kalu. I'm John McClain. Let's go right to our HCC Smart Decision of the Week. What's yours?
And you know what? Coming out of training camp, I'm going to give them a smart decision of the entire preseason, and it was to give James Casey from Rice University, hooty-hoo. Oh, you're just killing it. Don't worry about it.
That is so feminine.
It's giving James Casey a chance to compete at the fullback position after they let Vontae to greener pastures as he went to Baltimore and signed the big-time contract. With James Casey, not only do you get a guy who can block because he answered those questions, that was the number one concern. Can he block from the fullback position? He said yes. There were questions that he didn't have to answer. We all know about his athleticism. We know about his great hands coming out of the backfield, and we know about his ability to get the YACs, the YACs, the yards after the catch. So now you've just given Matt Schaub and Gary Kubiak another threat that could, one, block for Arian Foster when he calls to, catch the ball out of the backfield, and have defensive coordinators scratching their head. Can you imagine Andre Johnson, Owen Daniels, James Casey all on the field at the same time? It's going to be like a kid in a candy store for Matt Schaub.
Kevin Walter, all of them at least 6'3". I believe you on Casey. He was the secret weapon who's now about to be the not-so-secret weapon. I wish sometime because he can throw and run, he'd get a chance to do that too. Now, last year, Gary Kubiak told me, he said, we think Glover Quinn could be a Pro Bowl safety. And they wanted to be in a position to move him. The new coach, Vance Joseph, Wade Phillips, came in, moved him. He looks like he's a natural. He's smart. He's instinctive. He hits hard. He works well with Danielle Manning. I think Glover Quinn is going to play better than he played corner last year, and he was their best corner. I can't wait to see how he plays against the Indianapolis Colts. Now, let's go around the league. I know you want to start with the Dallas Cowboys. What's on your mind about Dallas?
Well, when you talk about the team that's up I-45 in the Dallas Cowboys, you look at their skill position and you have to be excited about what they have with Des Bryant, Miles Austin, Witten, one of the best tight ends, I believe, in the NFL, and Romo, who's a fine quarterback. But you have to look at that offensive line, and that's where your biggest concern comes from. Only 2 of the starting 5 have any experience as a starter in the NFL. You wonder if these 3 young guys are going to be able to protect Romo. You don't want him to get injured like he did last year. And when you put 3, not rookies, but first-year players without experience in front of your franchise quarterback, that's a concern.
Tells me they don't have a lot of depth up front because of those changes. Also, Marion Barber's gone, Roy Williams. Leonard Davis, I guess Leonard made so much money he didn't need to play anymore, but I thought he still had a little bit left. Cowboys like the Texans 6-10. Which one do you think is going to finish with the best record?
I think definitely the Texans are going to have the best turnaround. When you talk about your trenches not being strong, when you talk about depth, not having any depth at the offensive line position, that is a big concern. I personally would rather have a stable, strong offensive line unit than all these explosive, beautiful names at your skill position, because if you could protect your quarterback and give him time to pick people apart, then anything can happen. But if guys are in the face of Tony Romo or they're not making holes for Felix Jones and co, it could be a long day.
When you were graduated from Rice and you went to Philly, did you think you guys were going to have a dream team?
No. And I hate the fact that Vince Young had to open his mouth and tab them the dream team. Coach Reed, the whole Philadelphia organization, they like to stay under the radar. And I understand with the signings that they made in the offseason, it's hard to stay under the radar. But you don't want your players to go out there and call themselves the dream team, because now you've just put a target on your back. And, again, I have some concerns with that team. When you look at the skill positions, you have to be excited with Michael Vick, the most explosive quarterback playing in the game, with Deshaun Jackson, one of the most explosive wide receivers playing for them, running backs. All the skill positions are set, but the offensive line isn't set, and they looked horrible in the preseason. And I understand, I'll be the first one to raise my hand and say it's just preseason. You can't judge what's going to happen during the regular season. But when you have guys killing your quarterback, Michael Vick, every other play that he stepped back in a 7-step drop, that has to give you some concern. That in the middle linebacker position. They drafted Matthews in the 4th round, and they've already inserted him as your starting middle linebacker. One, you could say he had a heck of a preseason, or you could say he just didn't have much competition. So those are the 2 areas of concerns for the Philadelphia Eagles. 2
of my concerns for the Eagles, number one, I've never seen an offensive line coach become a defensive coordinator, but you got to think Andy Reid knows what he's doing when he moved Juan Castillo. And the other one is Michael Vick is going to get hurt. He always does. We're going to get to see Vince Young a little bit. We don't know how much, but Vince is going to get a chance for redemption. Now, you being a defensive lineman, I know you love Ndamukong Suh from the Detroit Lions, who got some fines for roughhouse tactics in preseason. Number one, what do you think about how good he's going to be, and could they be a surprise team?
First of all, I don't think it will be a surprise. If their quarterback can stay upright and stay healthy with the connection to Calvin Johnson, I don't think too many people are going to be surprised if they have success. And Ndamukong Suh, this is the biggest impact player I've seen at the defensive tackle position since Warren Sapp, and I hate that he's getting fined for playing football the way it's supposed to be played. He's getting fined for slamming quarterbacks to the ground, for hitting people hard. It's the NFL. That's what you get paid to do. That's the way they teach you how to play the game. And for him to get fined for that, being the type of person that he is, the type of player, he's an ambassador for the NFL. He's one of the good guys. He's one of the people you point to and say, this is how you're supposed to conduct yourself on and off the field. And for him to be getting fined the way he is for playing the sport the way it's supposed to be played, it's a shame. And I really think Ndamukong Suh, Kyle Vander Bosch, Nick Fairley, that defensive line, they're going to be terrorizing teams for all 16 weeks if they could stay together as a unit on the field.
And thank Fairley hadn't even played because he was hurt. Imagine how good he's going to be when he gets healthy and plays with Ndamukong Suh. Now, we're going to take another break. When we come back, Andy's going to have his Chalk Talk. It's Andy Kalu. I'm John McClain. Stay tuned.
It's the age-old question in academia, theory versus practice. Higher education research universities focus on research and theory. Career institutions focus on jobs. At HCC, we are uniquely set up to do both. Our faculty knows the theory, yet applies the practice of real-world experience for our students' benefit. It's the best of both worlds. HCC Smart Decision.
Welcome back to Radio Faces. I'm John McClain at HCC's Main Street Studios. He's Indy Kalu with his weekly Chalk Talk.
I received a tweet at Indy Kalu asking me, what do people mean when they say that Wade Phillips and the Houston Texans don't run the traditional or typical 3-4 defense? So first of all, let's exactly see what a 3-4 defense is. The reason you hear 3 come first, because you always designate the down lineman. So in a 3-4 defense, you have 3 down linemen, your 2 defensive ends, and your nose tackle, and you have 4 linebackers, your outside linebackers, and your 2 middle linebackers. When you hear 4-3 defense, then obviously you have 4 down linemen and 3 linebackers. I just want to get that out of the way before we started. And traditionally, and I'll speak in generalities, this is just very, very general and simplified. Traditionally, when you have a 3-4 system, you usually have your defensive lineman playing 2 gaps and holding the offensive lineman away from your linebackers. So in the traditional sense, like what you see with Pittsburgh or Baltimore, you'll have that big, strong Haloti Ngata, Casey Hampton type of nose tackle who's responsible for both A gaps. These are considered the A gaps, and typically the nose tackle is responsible for making sure that no ball or nothing comes through those A gaps. And both of your defensive ends also play a 2-gap system, as you see that they're responsible for the B gap and the C gap on both sides of the line of scrimmage. So when you see that, you usually have bigger, stronger down linemen. They're not as athletic. They're not the pass rushers you see in the 4-3 system. But what they can do, they can take care of all the gap responsibilities with just 3 people. In Wade Phillips' system in the Houston Texans defensive front, you will see a different kind of 3-4 system. And this is real exciting for the players, especially the underweight, more athletic players. Before each play, they will have a predetermined gap. So they don't have 2-gap responsibility. It depends on the huddle call. Yes, in the defensive huddle, we have calls also. But before each play, there's a predetermined responsibility for the 3 down linemen. So, for instance, in one play, you might have the nose tackle responsible for only 1 A gap. You could have the defensive end to your right responsible for a B gap, and you could have the defensive end on the left side responsible for the C gap. So then you could ask, well, what happens if the ball runs through any of these open gaps? That's where you have the stunts and you have your linebackers playing aggressively to the gap. Again, with predetermined gaps, you could play those gaps a little bit more aggressively. Then you could just fill those gaps and you don't have to read. And in this scenario right here, every gap is accounted for, and yet you still have 2 free linebackers. When you have a middle linebacker that doesn't have to account for a gap, then he can roam around and just get to the ball carrier, and you still have this weak side linebacker who is either rushing or doing the same thing as the middle linebacker, just roaming and getting to the ball. So that's the main difference when you talk about the traditional 3-4 defense compared to what Wade Phillips and the Houston Texans are running, is that they don't have to 2-gap. Most defensive linemen that want to get to the quarterback, they're athletic. They like to be able to just to hit a gap and be very athletic. And in the traditional 3-4, most of the guys, they'll hit their man and they'll be responsible for 2 different gaps. You will not see that many times, if at all, with the Houston Texan defense.
You had a lot of fun with that new toy, didn't you?
I like this new toy. I'm going to see if I can take it home.
That's impressive. Now, when we come back, we're going to bring you a genuine radio legend. That's Barry Warner, the original radio face. Stay tuned.
Just what makes a quality education for today's world? At HCC, it's the unique blend of theory and practice. That's why our faculty is specially qualified to use their impressive educational credentials and real-world professional expertise in the very same classroom. HCC Smart Decision.
Welcome back to Radio Faces at our HCC Main Street Studios. I'm John McClain. Next up, Houston radio legend Barry Warner. You can hear him 6 nights a week on Sports Radio 610. Take it away, Barry.
John, my rant today is all the knuckleheads that call our station and pollute the airwaves at the competition. Yes, I'm talking about you, Norman Negative, and you, Peter Pessimist, and all the gloom and doomers out there. Oh, I know your little hearts have been broken more times than the water mains this last week during the big drought. But get over it, will you please? These guys have not played a regular season game, and all we get is negative this, negative that. Let me tell you something. This football team is going to the playoffs. Right. And you know what? I'm drinking coffee here, not Kubiak-made Kool-Aid. This is me, not the Texans talking. Never has this football team been in a better place. The addition of James Casey in the backfield, replacing Vontae Leach, gives Matt Schaub yet another weapon. You got a healthy Owen Daniels right from the start. In defense, that is the talk of the National Football League. The professor, Wade Phillips, along with general manager Rick Smith, now has talent here. Major league talent by getting Jonathan Joseph, who you, the fans, will love, and a heat-seeking missile by the name of Daniel Manning, along with Glover Quinn, and getting a pass rush. You folks are going to be in for a big surprise. Never before has the division laid out, even with a healthy Peyton Manning. They've got problems in their offensive line. They're weaker defensively. Forget about Munchak in his first year in musical chairs at quarterback. Del Rio and the Jaguars down. The Texans, 11-5, finally make it to the playoffs, winning the AFC South. You got that, knuckleheads? Back to you, Johnny Mac.
Whoever thought you'd be Mr. Peter Positive? That's Barry Warner. After this, we'll bring back Indy Kalu, and we'll make the call.
How valuable is a faculty comprised of PhDs, MDs, MBAs, with international research grants and prestigious national positions? You'll find just that at HCC. But those aren't the only things that differentiate our faculty. We are at the forefront of what's next in teaching and technology. We are leading our students to new futures and better opportunities. HCC Smart Decision.
We're back with Radio Faces at our HCC Main Street studio. This is where Indy and I make the call. Let's start with a big game Thursday night. Two former Super Bowl champions, New Orleans and Green Bay. Who do you like?
When you say big, it doesn't get bigger than this. You're talking about two of the top 5 quarterbacks going against each other. I have to go with Green Bay and give them the home field advantage on this one.
A lot of people are picking New Orleans to upset Green Bay and go to the Super Bowl for the second time in 2 years, but no way I pick against the Packers at Lambeau. Now, we got your former team, the Dream Team, at St. Louis. A lot of people think St. Louis may win the NFC West.
Yeah, but winning the NFC West, do you even get anything for that? Do you get a hat or a T-shirt? All jokes aside, when we talk about Philadelphia going into St. Louis, I think it will be a tough game for the Philadelphia Eagles. But Michael Vick on that turf, he likes the turf. He's a little faster on the turf. I do believe the Philadelphia Eagles are going to take St. Louis in St. Louis's home. I
agree with you again. We got the other AFC South matchup, Tennessee playing at Jacksonville.
It's a big game because there's going to be big implications when you're talking about getting into the playoffs. You have to win your division games, and you have a division game right off the bat in the AFC South. Tennessee, Jacksonville, right now they're projected to be the last two teams in the division. When it's all said and done, I believe when you have an experienced quarterback, that's going to lead Jacksonville over Tennessee.
I think Tennessee's going to win that one. They're going to be fired up to have Chris Johnson back. Now, your second team, the Redskins, playing the Giants. What do you think?
Giants. No explanation needed. The Redskins right now, even though they won't say it, they seem to be a team that's rebuilding. And I understand they can surprise people with the zone blocking system and the 2 running backs that they've used in the preseason. But I really feel the Giants are a team that's really going to be fighting for the NFC division when it's all said and done.
I agree. We won't see Rex Grossman winning that one. Now, the big one, of course, we got the Texans playing the Colts. What do you think?
With or without Peyton Manning, it's the Houston Texans. I feel the coaches, the players, everybody feels this is their time. No excuses. The Houston Texans have a defensive-minded guy who's had success for many years in this league in Wade Phillips. You have the players in place, Houston Texans.
They better win this game or there's going to be a cloud over this city on Monday. Super Bowl champion,
Oh, we're going to go Super Bowl. I'm glad you asked because I have been thinking about it. But when you talk about the Super Bowl, you have to bring in New England. I don't care what you say. They've done it too many times. The dynasty's over. Bill Belichick, I believe, is the finest coach in the league. Tom Brady, how can you argue with what he does? With the addition of Ocho Cinco and Hainsworth, if he can get his mind right, New England's going to be a team that's going to make it to the playoffs, make it to the Super Bowl. When they get to the Super Bowl, they're going to be playing the Green Bay Packers. When it's all said and done and the smoke clears, Tom Brady's going to be putting another Super Bowl ring on his finger.
Well, I'm going with their arch rival, the Jets. Been one game shy of the last 2 years. I think this is the year they do it. I'm taking the Jets over the Falcons.
Wow.
Now, my MVP, I'm going with Aaron Rodgers of the Packers. Who do you think?
I've already mentioned him. I don't want to keep mentioning him, but Tom Brady, if they make it to the Super Bowl like I feel they will, if they win the Super Bowl with Ocho Cinco there, with Bill Belichick, with that offensive line in place to protect him, Tom Brady's set to have another MVP-type season.
Your offensive rookie of the year?
Offense, got to go with Mark Ingram. That's a guy that you could just implement into the system, and he's going to have success. I have a feeling they're going to play him a lot in the red zone, so he'll have a high touchdown total, and he's going to end up winning that award.
I think Mark Ingram's a great pick, but the Saints didn't trade. They traded a pick to get back into the first round to get him, but I'm still going with Julio Jones at Atlanta. I think they're going to throw him the ball in the red zone a whole lot. He's a great target, takes the pressure off of Roddy White and the running game with Michael Turner. They were 13-3 last year without him, and I think he might just help them get over the precipice, and that's why I have the Falcons going to the Super Bowl. Now, who's your defensive rookie of the year?
Cornerback Patrick Peterson. There was an injury to the veteran that was starting in front of him, so he's going to be starting from day one. Dynamic player, sure hands. I think he's going to make a lot of plays for the Arizona Cardinals. I see him getting 3-4 interceptions, taking one to the house, and that's going to lead him to being the defensive rookie of the year.
He also could be a very dynamic returner if that's what they want to use him. I got to go with Von Miller. I think the fact that he went to Denver, he's playing in a four-man front, but they're going to drop him down, let him rush wide in space. I think he's going to end up with at least 10 sacks. He's going to get a lot of attention just because I think he's going to have a lot of sacks. But I think you couldn't go wrong with either one of those guys, both top 5 picks. Now, that's the end of our first show that we're going to have this year. We're going to go all the way through the Super Bowl. He's Indy Kalu. I'm John McClain. Thank you very much for watching us on Radio Faces. We'll be back next week.